Most people don't lose because they are weak. They lose because they react. He has seen this happen far too many times. Intelligent, competent, prepared people who crumble at the exact moment someone exerts psychological dominance. The problem was never lack of ability, it was lack of emotional control. How to deal with intimidation begins here, understanding that intimidation is strategic provocation, and when someone provokes and you react automatically, that's it. The game has already started wrong. He asks, have you ever frozen in front of someone dominant? Have you ever felt your heart race while the other person seemed completely calm, almost cold? That's not weakness. It's biology mixed with social perception. But here's the point few explain. How to stop feeling intimidated isn't about becoming more aggressive. It's about staying calm under pressure when the other person expects the exact opposite. Intimidation is an emotional test disguised as confrontation. And what if he told you that today you're going to learn psychological tactics that completely shift this dynamic? Not to attack, not to compete by shouting, but to develop confidence under pressure and become mentally unshakable. How to deal with intimidating people requires something simple, yet rare: conscious response. And when you understand the power of body language, the pause, and emotional reading, well, you begin to realize the game is far more interesting than it seemed. And that leads us to the next step. Intimidation is a psychological game, and almost no one admits it out loud. Over the years, he learned that how to deal with intimidation has nothing to do with physical strength or job title. It has to do with emotional reading, perception, and silent psychological dominance. Those who intimidate are in reality testing limits. They're observing micro-expressions, pauses, breathing. And if you don't understand that, you end up playing a game you didn't even know had started. Machiavelli already suggested that perception is power, and he wasn't talking about cheap manipulation but about strategic awareness. Whoever controls their own reaction controls the situation. Simple as that. How to stop feeling intimidated begins when you understand that your reaction is the prize the other person wants to win. He has seen meetings where the most competent person lost space simply because they didn't stay calm under pressure. And interestingly, the one who seemed less prepared but had emotional control dominated the room. This is where something essential comes in. How to be mentally strong doesn't mean being cold or arrogant. It means knowing how to use psychological tactics like self-control, pause, and presence. The power of body language, for example, often speaks before the first word. Firm shoulders, slow breathing, steady eye contact. That communicates confidence under pressure without you needing to say anything. And now that he's made it clear that intimidation is a test, it's time to open the toolbox and enter the 7 moves that completely change the game. He learned this the hard way. In an important meeting, someone made a calculated, sarcastic remark, the kind that sounds like a joke but carries venom. For a second, the impulse was to react, justify, push back, prove a point. But there it was, the classic test of how to deal with intimidation. The first impact is emotional, not rational. And whoever reacts in that moment hands emotional control to the other person. Think of an experienced boxer. He doesn't attack at the first punch. He observes the pattern, measures the distance, understands the rhythm. The same applies to how to deal with intimidating people. When someone provokes, take a deep breath, count mentally to 3, stay calm under pressure. That small interval is one of the most powerful psychological tactics that exists. The pause breaks the script the intimidator had prepared. In practice, he recommends something simple. Breathe through your nose, release slowly, look directly into the person's eyes, and speak slower than usual. The power of body language here is decisive. You communicate confidence under pressure without raising your tone. This instantly shifts the dynamic and demonstrates silent psychological dominance. And interestingly, when you don't react at first impact, something unexpected begins to happen. And that's exactly what leads us to the second move. He often says that silence is one of the most underestimated psychological tactics in the world. Most people think they need to fill the void with words, as if silence were a sign of weakness. But in practice, when you learn how to deal with intimidation, you realize that silence is a mirror, and mirrors are uncomfortable. They reflect exactly what the person is projecting. How to stop feeling intimidated begins when you understand you don't need to compete in volume. Imagine an argument where the other person raises their voice. They gesture, interrupt, try to impose psychological dominance through noise. And you? You remain silent for a few seconds. You stay calm under pressure. You look steadily, without rush. That small gesture shifts the energy of the room. Suddenly, the discomfort changes sides. The intimidator begins to hear their own exaggeration echoing in the silence. In real life, this works in meetings, family conflicts, even negotiations. He has seen a director lose authority simply because he couldn't handle 3 seconds of silence. The power of body language combined with emotional control creates almost magnetic confidence under pressure. How to deal with intimidating people often means not giving them what they expect. Immediate reaction. And when you master silence, you begin to master something even more subtle. The emotional energy of the environment, which is exactly the next step. He learned something interesting over the years. Whoever controls the emotional temperature of the room controls the direction of the conversation. In tense environments, most people raise their voices, speed up their speech, gesture excessively. That's where everything derails. How to deal with intimidation also involves knowing how to cool the environment when everyone else is heating it up. That requires emotional control and the conscious decision to stay calm under pressure, even when pressure increases. Imagine a meeting room where 2 people are arguing. Voices rise, interruptions happen, the atmosphere gets heavy, and then you speak, but you speak more softly than everyone else. Slow rhythm, steady tone. This is one of the most effective psychological tactics to establish psychological dominance without aggression. Fire needs oxygen. If you don't feed the emotional flame, it starts to lose strength, and suddenly you become the most stable point in the room. In practice, he recommends training this deliberately. In difficult conversations, slow your breathing, relax your shoulders, and slightly lower your voice volume. The power of body language here is silent, but powerful. How to stop feeling intimidated often means taking on the role of emotional regulator of the situation. And when you realize you can influence the entire climate simply by adjusting your presence, you begin to understand that something even more subtle sabotages many people. And that leads us to the next trick. He has seen brilliant professionals lose authority in just a few minutes simply because they talk too much, explained too much, justified too much. When someone starts stretching their explanations excessively, trying to prove their value, what it communicates isn't clarity, it's insecurity. And how to deal with intimidation involves understanding that over-explaining reveals emotional fragility. Psychological dominance rarely shouts. It sustains itself through economy of words. There's a simple analogy he likes to use. A king does not ask permission to exist. He does not justify his presence every second. In the same way, when you learn how to deal with intimidating people, you realize that short and firm responses communicate confidence under pressure far more than long speeches. That was the decision. Pause, silence, steady eye contact. The power of body language complements what was said, or what wasn't said. In practice, he suggests an interesting exercise. Train yourself to answer difficult questions in no more than 2 sentences. Objective, clear, without unnecessary details. If someone insists, stay calm under pressure and repeat the central idea with slight variation. That demonstrates emotional control and reinforces your position without becoming defensive. How to stop feeling intimidated also involves stopping the need to convince everyone. And when you realize you can say less and still maintain authority, you begin to see an even more elegant move to turn any attack in your favor. He always says that when someone attacks, they rarely expect to be questioned back. The sentence comes ready, loaded with intention. You always mess up. And many people fall into the trap, start defending themselves, explaining, justifying. But how to deal with intimidation at a higher level involves a simple shift. Respond with a calm question. What exactly do you mean by that? That's it. The script changes. This is one of the most elegant psychological tactics that exists. You don't confront. You don't react emotionally. You simply put light on the accusation. Psychological dominance is not about raising your voice, but about demanding clarity. When you stay calm under pressure and turn the attack into a question, you force the other person to leave the emotional field and enter the rational one. And not everyone is prepared for that. In practice, he recommends strategic questions like, "Can you give me a specific example?" Or, "In your view, what would be the best alternative?" These questions demand intellectual responsibility. The power of body language remains essential here. Steady gaze, relaxed posture, controlled voice. How to stop feeling intimidated often means stopping defensive play. And when you learn to redirect the attack with confidence under pressure, you begin to realize that even before words, something even more decisive is happening. Before you even open your mouth, your body has already spoken for you. He often reminds that the power of body language precedes any logical argument. How to deal with intimidation starts in the physical, not the verbal. Tense shoulders, avoiding eye contact, rushed movements, all of that communicates insecurity. On the other hand, firm posture, slow breathing, and economical movements convey psychological dominance without a single word being spoken. He has observed something curious in negotiations. 2 people with the same technical level can have completely different outcomes based solely on physical presence. One talks a lot but moves restlessly. The other speaks little but remains steady, displaying visible confidence under pressure. Who do you think commands more respect? How to stop feeling intimidated often means adjusting the body first, and the mind follows. Body and emotion are deeply connected. In practice, he suggests a simple training method. Before an important conversation, stand in an open posture for 2 minutes. Breathe deeply and slow your gestures. Deliberately stay calm under pressure. Enter the room walking slightly slower than the environment around you. These are silent psychological tactics, but extremely effective. And when you begin mastering the body, you realize there's one final, more sophisticated level in this game, something tied to emotional unpredictability. He learned early that predictability is comfortable, but dangerous. Predators, manipulators, and intimidating people look for patterns. If you always react the same way, if you get nervous at the same trigger, if you raise your voice every time you're pressured, you become easy to read. And how to deal with intimidation at an advanced level involves breaking that pattern. Psychological dominance is also about not being completely decipherable. Think about someone whose reaction can't be easily predicted. Sometimes you respond with absolute calm. Other times, you use light, intelligent humor. In certain situations, you remain completely silent. This alternation creates strategic uncertainty, and uncertainty reduces the impulse to attack. How to stop feeling intimidated involves developing emotional control to the point where you choose your reaction, instead of simply reacting. That's confidence under pressure applied in real life. He recommends something simple to train this. Observe your own patterns. In conflicts, do you become defensive, sarcastic, too silent? Identify it and consciously alternate. Stay calm under pressure but vary your expression. These psychological tactics expand your influence without aggression. The power of body language remains your foundation, and when you master your emotional predictability, you realize you're no longer playing the intimidation game. You're leading the entire dynamic. Now he leaves a simple but uncomfortable question. How many times have you lost space not because of lack of ability, but because of emotional reaction? How many opportunities slipped away because someone tested your limits and you didn't realize it was just a test? How to deal with intimidation was never about winning by volume. It has always been about winning through reading the situation. If you truly apply these 7 psychological tactics, something shifts almost immediately. You begin to stay calm under pressure even when the environment feels heavy. Your emotional control strengthens. Your confidence under pressure stops being effort and becomes presence. And the most interesting part? Intimidating people start choosing easier targets, because real psychological dominance doesn't offer obvious openings. Now the decision is yours. Will you continue reacting automatically, or will you train yourself on how to be mentally strong consciously? Will you keep over-explaining, over-justifying, over-proving? Or will you use the power of body language, strategic silence, and emotional reading to lead any environment? If this content expanded your vision on how to deal with intimidating people, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here you learn real strategy applied to real life. And tell me in the comments, which of these 7 moves are you going to start applying today?